Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're diving headfirst into a universally traumatizing experience that probably still haunts some of your dreams. You know what I'm talking about, right? We're looking at the absolute pure chaos of high school board exams. In this explainer, we're going to break down the anatomy of an exam day disaster step by step. We'll be using some incredibly relatable source material that perfectly captures the panic, the absurd logic, and just the sheer desperation of students pushed right to the brink. It's funny, it's terrifying, and it is highly structured, so let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. The morning of the exam is just this ultimate breeding ground for extreme psychological contrasts. Take a look at the pre-exam chatter outside the gates. On one hand, you've got a student absolutely panicking, claiming they had a fever the night before and therefore could, quote unquote, only study for 18 hours. I mean, 18 hours! Meanwhile, their friend quickly points out the reality for the rest of the group. Golu hasn't studied 18 hours all year. It perfectly sets the stage, doesn't it? You either have over-preparers completely losing their minds over minor setbacks or under-preparers who are just kind of showing up for the ride. And that leads us straight into the first real phase of the morning.
Which brings us to Section 1, the pre-exam panic. Those agonizing final minutes before the doors open, yeah, they are a total breeding ground for panic. Every rumor suddenly sounds like absolute truth. You start predicting the questions that will appear on the paper, and the logic is flawless. Oh, question number 7 is definitely coming. Why? Simply because it is literally the single question you haven't memorized. Classic Murphy's Law of exams. And notice the sheer scale of the syllabus shock that can happen, like 5 minutes before you walk inside. Take Priya, for example. She casually mentions she studied chapter 5. This triggers an immediate, horrifying revelation for another student who confidently believed there were only 4 chapters in the entire textbook. Then the reality hits, there are actually 15 chapters. Just imagine realizing you missed 11 entire chapters right as the final bell rings. No way. Faced with that kind of impending doom, your timeline of priorities completely warps. So with just 10 minutes left to the start of the paper, they find room 7. They're instructed to leave their shoes outside. But do they use these precious 10 minutes to furiously revise those 11 missing chapters? Absolutely not. They rush in early with a single laser-focused mission: to sit down and meticulously draw formatting margin lines on their blank answer sheets. Honestly, organization over actual knowledge. It's a true survival tactic. And now we enter Section 2, the strict hall rules. Once you step inside, the vibe shifts instantly from chaotic panic to basically an authoritarian regime, ruled entirely by the invigilator. And the invigilator immediately starts inspecting what everyone brought. One student proudly presents a full geometry box, complete with a protractor and a compass. His intended use? Well, he confidently declares he is not leaving a single math question behind and has come fully prepared. Then comes the brutal reality check from the invigilator. Today is the science paper. Ouch. That deadpan realization that you are 100% prepared for the exact wrong subject, total nightmare scenario. This strict regime quickly builds into the invigilator's escalating threats. Step 1. Surrender your smartwatches, Bluetooth earphones, and any cheating materials right now, and you'll be forgiven. But what if you hold out? Well, Step 2. Your paper is seized. Step 3. A literal police case is filed against you. And then the terrifying ultimate penalty, Step 4. You are banned from taking any exams for 3 entire years. For the students in our source material who showed up entirely reliant on cheating, this specific heavy-handed threat induces pure, unadulterated terror. So, how exactly do friends comfort each other under this immense pressure? Well, by laying out the catastrophic spiral of failing naturally. One friend explains to the other that the worst-case scenario really isn't that bad. You just fail the exam, then your relatives will insult you, then your dad beats you with a belt and kicks you out of the house. Finally, you end up begging on the streets and picking up plastic bags, and that's it. I mean, what a brilliantly twisted way to calm someone down, right? Just casually mapping out the absolute ruin of their entire life. All right, moving on to Section 3, facing the question paper.
The rules have been read, the existential dread has fully set in, and finally, the papers drop onto the desks. The moment that paper is flipped over, the hall demographic splits instantly. You have that rare 10%, the student who loudly announces they know questions 1 through 10 perfectly. Then you have the 30% who are just desperately praying. We're talking invoking Ganpati, Allah, and Jesus all at once. So many deities that, as one student jokes, there won't even be enough room in the exam hall for all of them. But the largest group, making up a solid 60%, are the ones completely misunderstanding the questions. Case in point,
A student flags down the invigilator to complain that question 5 is wrong because it's a science paper asking about family relatives. The invigilator has to patiently explain, "Idiot, it's asking about the theory of relativity, not your relatives."
Which leads us nicely into Section 4, Desperate Cheating Tactics.
Look, when you don't know the difference between relativity and your uncle, you gotta get creative. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly that. Here we have a student's literal definition of Newton's second law. Lacking any actual scientific knowledge whatsoever, they lean into absolute fluff. They define it as a very good law, a highly respected, famous law that they chant 108 times before meals. But the absolute pinnacle of their logic? They note that the greatest thing about the second law is that it occurs right after the first law and right before the third law. And get this, they are expecting to get 6 marks for this answer on a 5-mark question. You really have to admire the audacity.
For others, cheating basically means blackmail. A clueless student corners the smart kid, Chatur, demanding the answer to question 10. Chatur tries to give this profound life lesson about honesty, but the cheater threatens to make a bunch of noise and get them both failed. So Chatur caves. He dictates, "The chemical reaction is exothermic, comma." The cheater immediately responds, "What is the spelling of comma?" Just let that sink in for a second. He is cheating on a high-level chemistry question, but literally needs to be spoon-fed the spelling of a punctuation mark. It is absolute comedy gold. Then we have the legendary importance of oxygen essay. Let's trace the bizarre step-by-step train of thought a student takes when trying to stretch a single fact into a long answer. It actually starts out logically. Trees take CO2 and release oxygen. But then it pivots violently. Cows eat trees. From there, it's just a complete descent into bovine anatomy. The student writes that cows are our mothers, they have 4 legs, 2 horns, and 4 udders that give milk. They conclude that milk is white, but oxygen is transparent. Therefore, oxygen is very important. Wow. It's a true masterpiece of padding an essay when you know absolutely nothing about the actual subject. But wait, the logic that's even better when his friend wants to copy this exact essay. The friend realizes that if they write the exact same thing, they're definitely going to get caught. So they need to change a variable, right? The original student used a cow to arrive at the milk conclusion. The copycat decides to be super clever and change cow to bull. When reminded that bulls don't actually give milk, the copycat completely dismisses it, arguing, "Who is going to come and check your bull's udders?" I guess in the exam hall, survival logic completely overrides basic biological facts. Okay, on to Section 5, Extra Sheet Anxiety. So the crucial point here is that time is passing, plunging us deep into the psychological warfare portion of the exam. You are staring at the number 1, because that is exactly how many pages our struggling student has managed to fill. Actually, wait, scratch that. It's worse. They haven't even written their roll number correctly yet. And what is happening all around them? The smart kids are shouting, "Sir, extra sheet, please." The sound of someone asking for an extra sheet when you haven't even finished your first page is just soul-crushing. Our source captures this intense jealousy and tension perfectly with this dramatic quote, "If they ask for one more extra sheet, I'll eat this paper and die." Seriously, the overachievers demanding more paper aren't just writing exams, they are actively dealing emotional damage to the rest of the room. Finally, we hit Section 6, the final bell rings. We've reached the last 5 minutes. The invigilator yells the classic instruction to tie the threads for those with extra sheets. Our poor student, looking down at his single, mostly blank page, dryly jokes about having no sheets and tying the thread around his own neck instead. As the seconds tick down, the unhinged final acts of desperation begin. One student treats the exam paper like a cliffhanger on a TV show, literally writing, "To be continued" in the supplementary exam right at the bottom. Another student realizes they know nothing, so they filled the entire page exclusively with the phrase, "Jai Mata Di," praise the mother goddess. They literally write a note swearing on the goddess, hoping to spiritually guilt-trip the examiner into giving them passing marks. Hey, there is power in devotion, sir. The bell rings, pens down. The paper is taken. We step outside for the post-exam gathering, which inevitably leads to some wild post-exam delusions. The contrast here is just stark. Student A is weeping, absolutely devastated that they will, quote, only get a 98 out of 100. Students B and C are engaging in a fierce, high-level intellectual debate about whether the answer to question 4 was 2.5 or 2.6. And then there's student D, who, when asked what answer he got, proudly and confidently states, "Ramen delicae." Complete, unadulterated gibberish. He has literally no idea what subject he just took, but he's thrilled it's over. This entire breakdown really captures the bizarre, highly stressful, yet incredibly funny microcosm of the exam hall. It shows exactly how extreme pressure creates absolute comedy. So I'll leave you with this question to ponder as we wrap up. Think back to your own school days. Did you ever have to rely on a Jai D or a ridiculous made-up essay just to pass a test? Let that nostalgia sink in. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.